For more reaction, we're now joined by Aaliyah Vayez, International Relations Analyst, and she joins us via our video link. Aaliyah, thank you so much for joining us this evening here in SABC News. What do you make of the ICJ ruling against Israel?
Thank you very much for having me. I think it is, as your previous speaker said, it's completely unprecedented and a proud moment for South Africa, but also for the international community as a whole. I think the ruling by the ICJ highlighted, every aspect tantamount to a ceasefire without actually mentioning the word ceasefire, which of course, many people have regarded as a disappointment, but in actual fact, the court rightly so detailed, not only the plight of Palestinian people today and for the last 3 months, but also highlighted the future risks of full consequences of Israel's continued action, such as the bombardment of the Gaza Strip, the urgency by which the international community needs to act, and more specifically, Israel, needs to the urgency by which Israel needs to stop or prevent its further actions. As well as the evidence and the detailed evidence behind, what South Africa's application stood for. Over 100 days now, the court rightly so acknowledged every aspect of what Israel has put the Palestinian people through without disregarding, for example, the need for the release of hostages taken by Hamas. So I think this is a big win, a big moral win, and I think it is now in, the court of public opinion as well as up to the international community as to how states themselves react and uphold the ICJ's ruling.
And one would say that this is also a major breakthrough for the people of Palestine. At the same time, while there is no humanitarian ceasefire that has been ruled, one would say that, when you look at the order, one important aspect as well is the fact that we know that there's a humanitarian crisis and as well as that bombardment by Gaza, but that has been ordered to stop, especially the killings in the Gaza Strip.
Yes, exactly. And, the provisional measures outlined by the ICJ kind of highlight every aspect of that, not only the humanitarian crisis, such as the, immense starvation, which your viewers are seeing on the screen right now, but also the conditions under which Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and as well as across all occupied Palestinian territories are expected to live. So, for example, the court highlighted that Israel needs to prevent the continued conditions by which Palestinian life is threatened, Palestinian births are threatened, and again, highlighted the necessity of humanitarian aid needing to enter the Gaza Strip. So I think, the court did an exceptional job by taking all the points that South Africa's initial application made, which again highlight not only the rights of Palestinians, but the conditions under which they've been placed over the past 4 months.
And what does it mean, this ruling? What does it mean for the people of Palestine and the pain and suffering they've endured over the past couple of months?
No, I think in the short term, I'm not blind to the fact that, as the ICJ was giving their ruling today, bombardments across the Gaza Strip continued by the Israeli Defense Force. So I think in the short term, unfortunately, it has not, stopped at all the bombardment of the Gaza Strip. It has not at all, reinstated rights of Palestinians to basic necessities or to the right to exist and to self-determination in the short term. However, I would want to highlight number one is that, since South Africa has laid this case before the ICJ, it has brought the Palestinian plight to the international stage in a way where the narrative around what is going on in Palestine right now has completely changed across Western media and across Western countries, where the term genocide is actually being associated with Israel, is actually being used to describe what is happening in Palestine, which is unprecedented in itself. So I think that has had a major impact on the way states are defining it in their diplomatic statements, in their foreign policy, in their bilateral and multilateral engagements, as well as in the court of public opinion, the average person on the street, and the way that they are viewing the ongoing genocide or quote unquote conflict. And then secondly, I think It is really, I mean, we've already seen the president of Algeria call for an immediate meeting of the United Nations Security Council, which in and of itself shows that South Africa has toppled the first domino, you know, in a large succession of dominoes, which are ultimately a campaign for an overall ceasefire. So I don't think, you know, this case should be at all, you know, disregarded just because the word ceasefire wasn't used explicitly. I think the implications of this are huge.
And sticking with that word ceasefire and, you know, not hearing that come out today, without this humanitarian ceasefire, are you hopeful that, you know, the much needed aid will reach the people of Palestine as ordered by the court?
On paper, I really do. I have immense faith in the fact that Israel will be put under immense amount of pressure by the international community, particularly its supporters like the US, like Germany, many other Western nations. Will be put under immense, will put Israel under immense diplomatic pressure to sort of lighten the conditions in Palestine, for lack of a better phrasing, which includes allowing humanitarian to cross, for example, the Rafah border with Egypt. I think in that sense, it's a drop in the ocean for what Palestinians need in the short and long term. But I think, you know, going back to the international picture, I think supporters of Israel are under immense amount of pressure to you know, really reflect and consider whether they want to be party to genocide, because that is what the ICJ, you know, reminded us of today, that there are enough circumstances for this case to move to the merit stage, by which Israel will be, you know, investigated for crimes of genocide, which is an exceptionally serious allegation. And I think every state that is supporting Israel or who has not spoken up against Israel needs to reflect on whether they want to be party to it, and whether they, by and large, are willing to ask questions of whether they respect the credibility and the value of the international system, which by extension is international and humanitarian law.
And on an international front, I mean, when South Africa hauled Israel to court, I mean, they were criticized, especially even coming out of South Africa itself, where many people were calling on South Africa, why are you getting involved, or why are you taking Israel to court? People were afraid of sanctions that may be imposed on South Africa. What does this ruling mean for South Africa on an international front?
I think to all of those critics, you know, it's not an unfounded, criticism of South Africa, but I would answer that on three fronts. The first is that this is, you know, South Africa taking Israel to the ICJ is immensely, you know, in line with South Africa's foreign policy and the stance that it has historically had towards Palestine and the occupation of Palestine. So it is not a surprise by any means. It is in line with what our country has done in the past. Secondly, of course, we have South Africa's historical context of having, you know, struggled through apartheid and overcome various forms of oppression, dispossession, and displacement, as well as, you know, international criticism for that. And third of all, I think reducing it to fears over, you know, consequences for South Africa on a bilateral level, for example, with its engagement with Israel, is, exceptionally reductive of the Palestinian plight, which is actually what this issue is about at its heart. South Africa is standing up not only for Palestinian people, but for its respect and belief in the international system of governance, which I believe every, you know, country has a stake in, because it is, the norms, principles, and laws by which the global system of governance, which every country is a part of, runs by. And I think if you want to continue to exist in that system, exist successfully, you must maintain it, and that is what South Africa is doing.
Aaliyah, thank you so much for your time this evening. That is Aaliyah Vayez, International Relations Analyst, also there continuing to give us her insight in terms of that ICJ ruling, in which came out a bit earlier on from The Hague in the Netherlands earlier today. Let's take a quick ad break. We'll have more news for you when we return. Stay with us.